meeting young people and graduates who don't think they've got a story to tell. They don't think they've got any oomph. And they have. They absolutely have. They've just got to find their voice somehow. So if I could wave a magic wand for young people, it would be to think really hard about stuff that they've done, anything that they've done. I mean, anything. And then be confident to say, this is what I did. Because interviewers will work with that. You hire for attitude, not for skill. And unless it's a skilled job that needs technical skill. I do a lot of work in the oil and gas industry now, and you know, if I'm interviewing for a reservoir engineer, you've got to be a reservoir engineer. But then that's not enough anymore. Yeah. It's what are you like? Yeah. Are you any fun? Are you real or not? Are you human or not? You have a good set of values. You know, you're fair, you're decent. And stuff like that, I think, is generic. There are then some competencies that are generic, like can you plan or not? Do you think about the future or not? Do you work hard or not? They're kind of generic as well. It's kind of 2/3 what sort of person you are, and if you've got some generic skills, and 1/3 do you know the bit of the business that you come from? Can you ask me more about football? This is really hard. There are some big rules, if you like. In no particular order. Fundamentally, be yourself. Find a way to overcome your nerves so that you can get some sense of you across. The thing about getting your physiology in the right place, right? If you did one thing and nothing else, so it's the same with preparing for an exam. It would be to breathe rhythmically before you go in. Okay. Right? Because the number one thing about the stress response, it's the brainstem, the fight or flight, is triggered by your heart rate, right? And it's not that your heart rate is high or low. So it's not that it's 120 beats a minute. And this gets a bit technical. It's whether it's in a rhythmical sine wave or not, right? It's whether it's whether it is a coherent heartbeat. And when you're frightened, it's not coherent. It's incoherent. It's going right? And there's a brilliant line in the stress research that says that's why stress makes you stupid. It's a brilliant quote. So your heart rate's going, your brainstem's going run away or fight. That's flooding you with hormones. Your brainstem's connected to your nervous system. That's why you have the shakes, right? And that process does a couple of things. It starts to shut your other organs down, like your stomach, which is why you get butterflies in your stomach. Right? The reason you get butterflies in your stomach is it's a stress response telling you to stop eating. You don't need to process food when you're scared. Right? The other organ it shuts off, sadly, is your prefrontal cortex. It gives you a frontal lobotomy. Yeah. So at the very moment you've got to be lucid and good and confident and remember your stuff, you can't. Because your heart rate's like the conductor of an orchestra. Right, and if the conductor's going, everything else is. Yeah. So my humble opinion, you can't vision your way into calming your heart rate down, but you can breathe your way into it. It's why mindfulness works, and it's why yoga works. I've done loads of presentations. I'm doing them all the time. I'm still scared every time. Every time. I know I'm having this stress response. I'm sitting in a client's reception. I just sit there for a couple of minutes and breathe rhythmically. And breathing rhythmically just means breathe in, breathe out. And just sit there, and you can have the newspaper and whatever it is, but you're just concentrating on rhythmical breathing. And it works in two ways. One, because you're forgetting to be scared, because you're focusing on something else. Yeah. And rhythmical breathing just brings the heart rate into a sine wave. And that turns your brain back on. So try and be yourself. Breathe rhythmically before you go in. Sort of big rule number 2 is they want you to be good. Okay. Every person I ever interview, I want them to be brilliant. I don't ever want to catch them out, ever. Okay. Right? So let's say I schlep into London, which costs me a load of money. It's a pain in the backside. I've got 5 people to meet. I want them to be good. I don't want them to be bad. So there's a lot of love in the room. So they're not trying to catch you out. So you've got to get your mindset into a place that says, they'd rather I did well than not. It's not adversarial. It might be with some interviewers, and they're a bit horrible, and but there aren't many these days. Not in big companies anyway. So they want you to be good. You know, to some degree, do your homework, but I wouldn't overdo it.
Okay.
Because if you overdo it, you're trying to remember stuff. When I'm interviewing people, I am never fazed when they've written stuff down.
Okay.
So sometimes, so you've got to do it cleverly, not like, where's my... But some people will just say, you know, if you don't mind, I've just written some ideas down. It might be, you know, the bit where over to you, have you got any questions? And you go, write them down. Yeah. On the back of, the interviewer wants you to do well. So I'm quite respectful of people that have written stuff down. What doesn't work is if I'm doing a behavioural interview and it's, give me an example of when you were competitive and you're leafing away for the competitive answers. It's got to be a bit more seamless than that.
Yeah.
But if writing stuff down for you works, do it. It's better than trying to remember it. You don't want to have to remember anything in an interview. Now, I know that sounds like chop logic, right? Because you sit there, and if it's Coca-Cola, you do a bit of research on Coca-Cola, and you look at you find out about them. You don't want to have to remember that. All the interviewer wants you to know is that you've done some research about Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
The interviewer wants to see a bit of you coming across. That's what they want, I think. You do it a bit like the way I've been doing it, right? You've asked me some really hard. And so I go just pull a funny face. Do you know what I mean? It's answer it from the heart. So here's the next rule of thumb. Try and find yourself talking from the heart, not the head. The killer thing that I can do now, because I've done it for donkey's years, is enjoy it. It's an opportunity for two people to talk about stuff. If you go into it, if it's adversarial, if it's win-lose, that's really tough because you're on stage and you're on show and you know, psychologically it goes right back to when you're a kid at school getting told off by the hen. So it's not adversarial. It's not. I'm good at stuff. I'm not good at other stuff. I've got lots of potential and I'd love to come and work for you. Now, if that doesn't happen, that's okay. There are some rough rules of body language, right? Which are what I'm doing now. Be attentive, eye contact, just being reasonably positive.
Yeah.
They're the big ones. You know, if you're looking down there when I'm answering your question, it's tough to get any rapport. My job as an interviewer is to let that individual be as good as they can possibly be in the real world, not as good as they can be by making it up. Right, so the problem with competency-based questioning these days is everyone practices them. So you have your great answer for resilience and stuff. And it is why I said often, I just chuck that out and I just tell me about your mum and dad and stuff. And what's the hardest rugby game you ever had? And people go, figure this out. When I've just thrown you, what's happening is, You've had a Daniel Goleman calls it having an amygdala hijack. The bit of your brain that's the emotional bit is called the amygdala. And you have a hijack. It's literally, right? It's a physiological thing. So it's how quickly can you get back to, I'm just going to answer it.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to tell the truth from the heart, and that might be the right answer, it might not, and that's okay. If you can get to that level, then you'll be great. Practice that again and again and again, you know, almost to the extent that people think you're a bit weird. So when you're watching the TV, I would say out loud, that TV is making me feel like this. Say the words.
Yeah.
Don't let the first time you've actually really spoken from the heart be the interview that you really want, and it's the first time you've ever done it. Make it the 100th time that you've done it. That's what an interview is. You've asked me a question, I'm going to answer it, and I'm proud of my answer. And I hope you like it. If you can get into that rhythm, you sound like $1 million. You can then be skillful. So here's the quote that I love from a book called, it's the Goffey and Jones book. And the book is Why Should Anyone Be Led by You? Right? And the quote in the book is, be yourself more. Right? So in quote, be yourself more, ... with skill. And I love that quote. So, be yourself more means be yourself. The skill is answering the questions skillfully. So if the skill might be, if I can't think of an example from my Saturday job or working in a pub, but I can remember one from playing rugby, then that's the answer. That's the skill. It's not a genius level skill. What doesn't work is not being yourself and learning all the answers.
Yeah.